So the question before you today is, are Western missionaries still needed? So what I mean by that is, should we be sending Americans overseas to be missionaries and global partners? There is a growing idea within kind of the West that we shouldn't be sending Westerners anymore. And as our missions pastor here at BlackRock, I would say I totally disagree. But I actually somewhat agree with the ideas that they present within their argument. But what I would say is, and we still send our Western missionaries. And here's what I mean by that, is that the first idea is that the church is growing throughout the world, and the church is a global church now. So in the early 1970s, there were 112 million evangelicals worldwide. In 2020, there were almost 400 million evangelicals worldwide, with 77% of them being in the global south. And what I mean by that is they are below the equator. So the church is growing rapidly below the equator, and we're seeing this like boom there. But that doesn't mean that because there's a boom there that we stop sending missionaries. The Global South is actually sending more missionaries now than those in America, but they're not saying replace us or we will replace you. They're saying we will go along beside you. And so that very reason that the church is growing doesn't mean that we stop sending Western missionaries. The second idea is that globalization is making it where we don't need to send Westerners. And yes, the gospel is available on your phone, on the internet, and that people have access to that throughout the world. But you know what? The church still isn't established for almost 3 billion people. 3 billion people cannot go to a church within their own community. And so, yes, the gospel is there for those who can find it on the internet and through their phone, but it still is not accessible for them within a local church context. And that's why we need to continue to send our very own. And yes, the church throughout the world is sending the most missionaries ever. And it's exciting to hear how South America has gotten the calling to send their own. But that doesn't mean that we can't or shouldn't be sending our own from our own church. It just means that, you know what? Let's join with what is happening throughout the global church in them sending so many that we can partner with them. And I know for myself, when I hear from many of our partners worldwide, that yes, they are joining with nationals from so many different countries, working together to bring the gospel. Again, we have a part in that, and I'm excited for that. In some ways, those from the global south are more effective and bring the gospel to many closed countries. And the reason why is they're not Americans. And Americans, in many ways, have some hurdles to jump through in many of the closed countries. But that doesn't, though, mean that we can't be sending our own in strategic ways, in strategic places, so that they can bring the gospel in their own story, in their own talents to the world. God is calling all of us to go and use our own talents, our stories, to bring the gospel, not just those in the global south. And yes, it is cheaper for us to send those in the global south throughout the world. And sometimes it's really expensive for us to send our very own. But God doesn't look at finances when it comes to our personal calling to go and bring the gospel to all nations. He says, I will provide, I will make a way. And we will be good stewards with everything that God has entrusted us with, and we will support those from the global south. We will support those who are nationals, and we will support those within our very church who want to go and bring the gospel. What I'm excited about is that the church is growing, that more and more people are being called throughout the world to bring the gospel to the 2 billion people who have never heard about Jesus, that don't have a local church. And together the church can bring that gospel, can bring the good news, can plant churches, can train up those who will start these churches and have that multiplication happen. Churches that lose their passion for global missions do this. They stop sending their own. When we stop sending our own, we will stop doing and living out the Great Commission. So for us at BlackRock, we will send our own when we are called, when we have those that have been called by Jesus to bring the gospel to the world. Is God calling you? Is God calling you to bring the gospel to the ends of the earth? I'd love to talk to you if you feel that calling. If God isn't calling you there, then support us in praying, giving, and going. Our missions commitment is your way as those who are in the United States to be a part of the Great Commission. So will you pray, will you give, and will you go as part of what God's calling you to do here within where God has you? Thanks.